Welcome to Truth, Money, and Freedom. Today is Friday, January 3rd, 2020, the first podcast of 2020 from Truth, Money, and Freedom. But today we have a special broadcast. We have a roundtable discussion about California, or I'm sorry, the Soviet Republic of California. So with me tonight, I have, of course, the inestimable American man, 1967, who is living the nightmare that is the Soviet Republic of California. We also have with us ChaosCraig and Conjecture as well. So welcome to you all.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, American man, if you don't mind, we'll go ahead and start with you. And the big thing here is, of course, the California's health mandate penalty and coverage of immigrants in the state illegally explained. The main story we're covering. We'll cover more stuff too, but I'm going to start you out with a question because according to this guy on tweet, starting January 1st, 2020, California will tax legal citizens if they don't have health insurance. Why? The state needs to come up with $98 million to pay for the free health insurance for illegal aliens. Why do Democrats keep putting illegals first? Okay, American man, hopefully you can answer the question for us.
Well, it's a good question. And to be quite frank, it's frightening. America, to me, has always been, the country that takes care of their own people. And unfortunately, in these times, recent times, that's no longer the case. We seem to be catering and waiting on hand and foot and giving things to other people from other parts of the world. And if we make videos or podcasts about these type of things and we discuss them in the context that we're talking about and tonight, then you're considered to be a racist and a hateful, mean, and ugly person. And in fact, when mainstream media talks about things that are free, they're not telling people in communist California nothing is free. Somebody has to pay for them. So why in 2016, 17, 18, and even in 19, when we had these caravans of illegal migrants coming through South America to try and break their way through the lines here to get into California, people were like screaming on their behalf, supporting, why can't we help these people? Well, now you're going to find out because you are going to have to pay. Nothing is free. In my opinion, the state of California is trying to drive taxpayers, American citizens, and destroy the middle class and push them out of the state of California. So there'll only be two classes of people here. That'll be the wealthy and the illegals, because the illegals work any job they'll be in office because they think California, that's part of the United States, is a better option from where they come from. This is why I believe these things are happening, and it's almost like our own government hates us because we're American citizens. It's nauseating, it's sickening, and it disgusts me. We can't afford it. And the middle class in California is dying like a rare bird. We're becoming extinct. Okay, people are leaving by the hundreds of thousands every year. California, there are over 1 million homeless people in the state alone. I've lived here my entire life. I know what I'm talking about. But for now, I'm going to digress.
Okay, gotcha. Hey, Craig, Conjecture, any thoughts on what we have here going on in California with California mandating healthcare coverage for their legal citizens mandating it or penalty so they can afford to pay for the illegal citizens' healthcare needs?
Craig, you go.
So, when you phrase the question like that, you mean that they're, what's the actual budget situation look like, first of all? So,
well, they have to come up with $98 million in fines for those who don't have health care. so they can pay for illegal aliens who don't have health care.
That's
Because,
literally that money is literally earmarked for that purpose.
yes, that's correct.
Yes, that's what's in the bill.
Huh.
It's actually
Typical.
not a bill. It looks like to me
You know
it's a
how this
law.
works?
Go ahead.
How this works is it's a law that if you vote for makes you look good if you're catering to these this type of SJW type of voting base, right? So,
Right.
That's right.
and that's ultimately why something like that will pass.
It
Right?
has already passed. He already
And-
signed.
Yeah. And a lot of the voters in California are are actually acting against their own best interest.
Exactly.
But the real problem here is the moral hazard of the welfare state in the first place.
Very, very correct, Craig. I agree with you 100%.
Very true.
I mean, no problem with immigration. That's part of free market principles is trading labor freely across borders. But it's this welfare state that's causing this moral hazard.
And pandering to them,
Yeah.
I don't get it because most states, illegals are not allowed to vote. But that's not true in California, is it, American man?
No, they're allowed to vote here. They're issued a social security number. As of lately, they're given a driver's license and a tax ID number and told to go to work as long as they pay their taxes. So basically, they're a citizen without being a citizen.
Yep.
Also, I want to point something out since we're on the subject of illegals in the state of California. It is easier now currently, or it was in 2019, for an illegal immigrant to get a state license, to start his own business versus a U.S. citizen. A U.S. citizen will be charged 3 times the amount of money to get that same license and to start the same business.
And that kind of stuff has been happening here in America for years. I remember when we were getting a lot of people from Vietnam into the United States in the 80s, and they were given an enormous amount of money to buy homes, start businesses, and the such, where American citizens wouldn't qualify for that. So
Right.
I remember a system like that at the time as well. But I mean, as it stands right now, I'm sorry, Conjecture, let's let you weigh in on this, buddy.
Oh, I was just going to say that it would be nice if, we weren't one giant super country where we had one power to rule them all, one Congress, one Senate. If we were just a bunch of different states that all just agreed to kind of, let each other in between, the states and the United States, except they'd all actually be states. That would be more preferable because then I would say just let California go, just let it, let them have their communist utopia that they so hope for. It's not going to happen, and maybe, maybe they can try to do whatever they want. Just, you know what I mean? If they want to vote in communism, let them suffer through communism.
Yep, it's California is just basically a landing platform, for the Chinese, kind of like Higgins Beach or Omaha's Beach. It seems to me that a lot of Chinese values are seeping into California as well, and that it goes above and beyond what we're talking about with healthcare now. I understand, but it seems to me that there's a lot of communist ideals that are being embraced, not just socially, but also politically within the boundaries of California, legislative-wise.
In some parts of China, they have some of the freest markets in the world.
Mhm.
About 6 cities have markets, that are basically the freest in the entire world. And about 200 million people either live in or around them. And just with 6 cities, China dug the entire country out of poverty or out of extreme poverty. In this particular case, it was a hard lesson learned that communism doesn't work. And if California wants to vote in communism and implement a policy of extreme poverty for moral values, why not just let them? Just let them leave the Union. We all leave the Union. And just let them do it.
I have a response to that. First of all, and I don't mean to offend anybody by saying this, because this isn't personal towards anybody, but this is for everybody to hear. California has never left the Union, and I'd bet my life on it. California will never leave the Union. And the reason why I'm saying that is because California is the third largest economy in the world, and which gives me a point of saying I don't think that this is going to stop here just at California. I believe there are other states that are going to copy California's example.
Yeah.
So all the people that will leave California that don't agree with this type of socialist government that we have here, communists, they're going to I'll have to find a state that's not going to copy California's example. And I mean, I feel like sooner or later, every state in the union is going to be doing the same thing. Now, I could be wrong there, and I'll be more than happy to say that this is just my opinion. But I believe that because each state has their own states' rights, the United Nations is behind this. And I believe the United Nations going to go to each state and for some reason give them an incentive to do the same thing. And who's stuck in the middle, who's going to suffer most? It's the American people. But in my opinion, again, I have to say, we have nobody to blame but ourselves because we're a bunch of zombies. We don't stand up to the government and we don't demand our freedom of speech, our right to have a gun, just pretty much all our freedoms to be free. Our civil liberties are being stomped on and trampled on by states like California. And everybody seems to think Donald Trump's the savior of the country and he doesn't care. Go ahead, anybody else?
Okay, I'd like to say first, I heard what you said. I think you misspoke briefly at the beginning of that. I believe California is regarded, if it were separate, would be the sixth or eighth largest economy in the world. I think you may have said third by accident. So I was just going to get that out of the way first. And that's actually a really good point by itself. It is falling. There was a time where it was third and then fourth. And I remember sixth. And then I think it's slipped to eighth now. And that's because of the massive debt load the state is carrying and the businesses leaving the state, which is the biggest reason. In fact, I personally know a guy. His name is Scott Roberts, and he runs a company called Explore Scientific. It's a telescope company. And he ran out of California because of the taxes. Despite the fact that he has more leftish leanings, he did see the common sense of it. His business would fail if he had stayed in California. So he moved his business to Arkansas, and it's thriving. So the business, businesses have to look at this, basically from an extremely objective point of view. And that's why companies like Intel or even Explore Scientific, a telescope company, are leaving the state. Now, consequent to that, we have upper middle class and rich people also leaving the state. The middle class will be left holding the bag, much like we're seeing in Illinois right now. They can't seem to leave because no one's moving in to buy their homes. So their homes are somewhat like a boat anchor, that chain around their leg. And that's the unfortunate thing when something like this happens in a state like Illinois, New York, or California for that matter. And Illinois is the biggest example, in my opinion, because I do believe those with a lot of money are pretty much gone from Illinois now because they are sinking, the government is sinking their tax fangs into those who are left again, which is what you're about to experience there, American man. This bill that we're talking, or I'm sorry, this law that we're talking about is just another example of the tax fangs literally latching onto your neck, the vampires coming in for blood. And I'll give up the floor for a little bit if Craig or Conjecture have more thoughts. Okay, nothing from... Oh, go ahead, Craig.
It's just this whole trend that American man's talking about. That's how it's going. But what happens is these big states like California and New York, they had vibrant economies, and their government abuses them
Mm-hmm.
and think that, oh, we could just keep increasing taxes, and they'll carry the extra weight and take the extra burden. And the only reason that the companies are still there is because they were built when the economy was a freer economy,
Right.
and still situated there because because they got comfortable and complacent.
Well, in
And
some
now these,
cases, Craig, wouldn't you agree, though, that some laws were created that made it easier for certain businesses to stay? The corporatism, maybe, structure between the California government and those businesses?
oh well, I'm just saying that a lot of businesses, just by virtue of having a physical location,
Mm-hmm.
get
Okay.
comfortable in a certain place. If you have a manufacturing plant, you have a warehouse, and you have all your stuff set up. It takes
Mm-hmm.
effort to move your equipment out of the state, to
Sure.
train new workers, to relocate existing workers. It's a big deterrent to move, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so they know that they can raise taxes, you know, just high enough until for that for the taxes to be less money than that deterrent, right? But
Yeah.
because of their hubris, they're exceeding that threshold, and people are making the decision to leave more and more,
Mm-hmm.
and the state, it's basically hopeless. The trend is only in one direction, and there's not really any sign of that ever reversing at any point. So
I agree.
Which is another, strong incentive to leave, is the future anticipation of such tax hikes and regulations.
Yep.
For instance, in when it comes to minimum wage, it's actually a huge cost to a lot of companies like McDonald's. For instance, McDonald's is trying to automate, the check-in stands where you place an order on the future anticipation of higher minimum wage
That's
laws. For
right.
instance, yeah, those machines where they take your order, those kiosks, they effectively, if I remember correctly, cost an average throughout their entire, expected lifetime $12 an hour to run, right? So they expect when minimum wage keeps rising that if they just do this in advance before it gets even to $12 an hour, McDonald's will have had a huge net cost savings.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, the difference between a person and a kiosk is a kiosk will work full time without insurance. So it's illegal for a person to do that.
yeah.
Which leads me to my next point. California has now moved I believe it's I'm sorry, I'm having a senior citizen. Um, I'll yield the floor to ChaosCraig. I've lost my train of.
Hey, Craig, if you don't mind, I'd love to move to the next story here that we could probably chew on for quite a while. The story title is In Acting on 1,000 New Bills, Newsom Shows He's Not Jerry Brown. Now, I'm scrolling down in the story here a little bit to talk about some of the laws that got passed here. And one of them is ending the use of private prisons, allowing undocumented immigrants onto state boards and commissions. In other words, basically government jobs for illegals. And let's see, make abortion pills available to students, because previously they had to have parents' permission. Actually, I think at 17 they had to have parent permission to take the abortion pill. We're RU86. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
I believe that's the next day pill or whatever. It's basically
Morning
just one
after,
giant
yeah.
dose of
Yeah, morning.
estrogen.
Yes.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
just one giant estrogen pill to make women infertile.
Yep. And so basically a bunch of laws like that got passed that even Jerry Brown wouldn't pass those bills, proving that Newsom is far, far more communist than Jerry Brown could ever hope to be. I don't know what else to say about that, but at any rate, yeah, there is. It happens yearly. California does a whole bunch of laws, and that creates a bigger government in California and requires more taxation. And this is one of the reasons you don't see stuff like this happening in Missouri. Now, they do have a period where they do pass bills, but I've never heard of anything more than maybe 60 or 70 bills being passed at one time in Missouri, where California holds, I think, probably a record, doing 1,000 new bills per signing.
Uh,
So that's adding to the regulation, the red tape, the bureaucracy, growing government.
Just growing exponentially forever.
Yep, that's correct.
Well, the interesting thing is the government can't grow exponentially forever. There's the Laffer curve, which they have demonstrated quite adequately with the marijuana. I just saw an article just today that only about a fourth of all cannabis sold in California actually comes from licensed vendors, because the regulations and the bans and where stores can be placed, it makes it such a burden to purchase cannabis legally that 3/4 of the market is black market, and something about, if you were to buy it legally, about a third of what you pay is straight taxation and regulation. Regulatory burden and taxation. And they plan on increasing it.
Yeah, I'd rather stick with the black market. So
There's merit with that statement, Craig. I agree with you.
I would like to point something out real quick about the bills that he signed into law, and that is most of the bills that Gavin Newsom signed into law in 2020. Not all the verbiage has already been placed in those bills. I want to make sure the listener understands that. Okay? So he's doing this after he signed these bills into law. The lawmakers now writing all the different stipulations of these bills in.
That's
For example, one of the bills that he signed had to do with California law enforcement and how they're to determine whether they can or should use lethal force. But yet all the verbiage that needs to be put in there in order for them to follow the said guidelines to make that determination has not been written up yet.
Okay. Well, that kind of reminds me of...
a lot of...
I'm sorry, Conjecture. Go ahead.
That's a common thing they do in a lot of bills. I believe the Patriot Act, they had entire sections of the bill that they just signed off on that were to be filled in later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That is correct. And also, don't forget Obamacare, which is a living, breathing bill that can be changed anytime they want without any further legislation. It's the first bill of its kind where it's literally, they voted on it, it's in now, and they can change it wherever, however they want without any further legislation on the changes.
This is sickening, guys. It really is. This should be scaring anybody and everybody that listens to this podcast that lives in the state of California. It really should be.
Now that you bring that up, American Man, brought up a story here. 2 groups aim to recall Newsom. Here's what you need to know. Of course, this story will be linked down below, along with the follow-up, which is download the petition to recall Governor Newsom. So, American Man, take it away.
Well, there's over 2 million people in California trying to recall Gavin Newsom. So I want to people right now who live in California as I do. Listen, if you're not aware of the fact that there are many, many websites out there that you can go on and you can sign a petition. There's one you can download a copy of the petition. You can sign it and send it in through mail. Please go to your computer, your laptop, whatever. Go to the website. We'll leave links down in the description of the video, and you can sign the petition to recall Gavin Newsom. He's a criminal. He's committing crimes against the American people in the state of California. He's committing treason as far as I'm concerned, in my opinion. He's tyrannical. He's Orwellian. We need to get him out of here, guys, before he does any more damage to California. He's done. He's done twice the amount of damage that Jerry Brown has done in the short time that he's been in office. So please go sign the petition, do your part, be proactive.
And I'd like to echo something you said here, and then I'll let Conjecture and ChaosCraig give their 2 cents. If word gets out to Central America and even South America that if you get into America, you have free health care, all you have to do is plant your butt in the state of California, they will come. If you offer it, they will come. That is like the biggest advertisement, the biggest, baddest, best advertisement I've ever heard. Hey, come to our state. You'll get everything for free, including healthcare.
Right.
So it's going to be you guys are turning into an electromagnet for illegals.
Really?
I don't know what else to say about that. And also too, this, you guys, the link for this page I'm showing right now will be down below. But if you look on that graphic there with the bear holding California, water tax, free illegal immigrant health care, sanctuary state, overruling popular votes, reducing police support, gun control, highest gas tax in the nation, government overreach. I mean, you guys can take a look at that too. But I'd like to echo what American Man said. In a free market, unfortunately, and I'm just going to say this, brass tacks, in a free market, California should be allowed to be as communist as it wants to be. States' rights give it that right to actually go overboard on certain issues. Things that are not, taken care of by the federal government, the states have the rights to do it. So if California wants to become communist, then so be it. I mean, I'm a libertarian, so I'm about, people having, free choice and property rights and this and that and the other thing. However, the only reason this sort of thing happens is because good people don't stand up. So if you're not willing, if you live in the state of California and you're watching this podcast, and if you're not willing to at least participate in the recall, then understand what you're getting out of this. California is shifting to communism on many levels. I don't need to go any further than that, but basically taking money from you by the point of a gun so they can give it to people they want to give it to is communism. It is a tenet of communism. And I'll yield the floor to ChaosCraig and Conjecture.
Yeah, so I have something to say. So I don't think that taking political action is going to get you anywhere. We've had democracy this whole time. It hasn't been working.
Right.
And the situation just keeps getting worse. So, you just got to let it get really, really, really bad until everything blows up and hopefully government loses its legitimacy altogether. And then once people stop believing in government will be rendered powerless.
What I would have to say on this whole issue is I'm kind of with PC on this. I like the idea of people being able to freely leave their government and, go have the government of their choice. If they want to go live in a communist hellhole, they have the right to go do so. Just let them wander into it. It would be nicer if California was a significantly smaller state, and they could be as communist as they want, and the cost to move would only be a few miles, rather than a few hundred miles. Yeah, it depends on where you're at and where you're going to.
I'd like to go one step further. I don't think that not only is a union of states good, I don't think the states are good in the first place.
Yeah.
So, yeah, because you have, people from the cities imposing their will on the people in the rural areas. The problem is that they share a state in the first place. So, obviously separating the rural areas from the urban areas would be one step, but somehow dissolving those governments too is the ultimate, ideal.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, American Man. This is probably one of the freest formats that I think we've ever heard of on the internet, where you get a libertarian point of view, anarchist point of view, conservative point of view. But I've never heard anyone argue for the left point of view on this. But Craig is, interestingly enough, got a really good point, and that's let California fail, and let's see if people like it. And if they do like the failure
Mm-hmm.
that is California, they can go live there. But I'd like to submit, and not jokingly, but it would be very interesting if, basically when California does become completely communist, and you're under the iron fist of communism in that state, we could turn it into a touristy kind of a thing where you can go experience communism for a week while you're on vacation. Very small portions of food when you go to the restaurant. Where the government gets to decide where you stay when you're on vacation there, whether it's a tent or a log cabin or a mansion, depending on, how friendly you are with the government there. Um,
Yeah.
Perhaps, some people are allowed cars while they vacation there, while others are not. Um, Basically just for the communist experience. And I'm thinking that California can offer that service to the rest of the United States. Just kind of set itself up as a tourist attraction to experience communism.
California is a great place to visit. There's a lot of good things to do. California will always be near and dear to my heart. All the national parks and the
Oh yeah,
ocean.
I agree.
Uh,
And by the way, I was kind of joking here, guys.
We know you were joking. I was just getting ready to say, maybe you should start yourself a travel agency on this whole principle. But yeah, no. One more time, guys, to the listener, I would like to say, if you live in California, it is your moral obligation and your responsibility as a United States citizen to go to the website and to sign and to recall Gavin Newsom. It really is. You know, we talk a lot in these podcasts about gun controls and the right to have a gun, and California seems to be passing more gun control bills as well. And TC, can you explain to the listener, in your opinion, why you think that is? And then can we briefly discuss what happened in Texas just for a
Okay,
moment
you
before we
bet.
end this podcast?
Sure. Okay, as many of you probably know, they have some of the most draconian gun laws in the United States in California. Now, not to be compared with Chicago or Cook County, Illinois, but once you remove that from the equation, California is like the second worst in the nation. And the reason why governments like to collect weapons or make it difficult to buy weapons or sequester weapons or just do an out and out ban on weapons is because government officials are smart enough to know that they are the ones who will have the targets on their back when things go bad. Government officials and bankers know that smart people, critically thinking people, will go after politicians and bankers when the proverbial stool sample hits the rotating oscillator. They will become targets. People will take their guns and go kill politicians and bankers. This is just, we know this. I mean, this is how it happens. So that's why politicians are always trying to take away guns as things get worse. The last thing they want, and they'll say it's, basically because, oh, geez, we're having all kinds of problems with AR-15s. Well, statistics show that's simply not true. It's just not true. The biggest problem we have is 9mm handguns. Yet you don't see them going after 9mm handguns. There's a reason for that. That's because AR-15s represent a bigger threat to the politicians, and that's what they're trying to go for. It's always AK-47s and AR-15s.
Right.
So in short, let me just say it like this. Politicians need to take away guns so politicians do not get shot by their angry constituents. That's a fact. Now, you won't find people saying it this boldly on YouTube, but we know that our channel, we're on a limited amount of time here on YouTube. We're not going to be here forever, gang. And I promise you, I will not shut down the channel. But Truth, Money, and Freedom is probably targeted as well, just as much as any other conservative or libertarian think tank that does exist on YouTube. So I'm just giving you the brass tacks. Bankers and politicians need guns to disappear because they're afraid for their lives. That's the truth. Okay, now leading into Texas, go ahead, American Man. I'll let you start with Texas.
Okay, so this story right here proves why gun control is asinine. A few days ago in Texas, we had a guy with a long coat coming with a concealed weapon, which was a long gun. He stood up after the church services started, pulled out his long rifle, and started shooting members of the church. There were 2 or 3 members of that church that were properly trained and authorized to carry handguns inside of that church in case this scenario should happen to take place. They drew their sidearms, returned fire, and they eliminated the problem. That's why gun control is stupid. Enough said.
Yeah, well, the point is very clear on that. Criminals do not follow laws, period. So if you make a law banning a handgun or banning a rifle or banning all of them, criminals will not follow that law. The law-abiding citizens will, and for a time, the criminals will literally rule the roost. So this is what happens. But at the same time, I echo American Man. And by the way, we put out that video roughly about, I'm going to say it was almost 14 hours after we recorded it, and there was a bunch of new data that came out. So American Man and I will get together and do an update on the Texas shooting and the shooter, and get that out sometime before the weekend is over. So just so you guys know on that one. But I'll tell you what, though, American Man, if you don't mind, I'd like to give Conjecture and ChaosCraig an opportunity to add anything else that they can think of about California.
Go ahead, gentlemen. I apologize.
I just have one point to make, and that is we should just let California fail. Let them be the example to the rest of the country. What happens when you implement such economically backwards policies? And then states like Missouri and so forth
New Hampshire.
can show the rest of the nation. Yeah, Missouri, New Hampshire, and so forth show the rest of the nation, what it takes to succeed. If we keep butting in, for instance, and encouraging people to take down these terrible governors, it's going to prolong how long it takes California to fail. However, if you live in California and you don't want it to fail, you're kind of out of luck. You're just going to have to find, in many cases, just a new state. Because you're going to be outvoted. There's nothing you really can do. The people who like the way that this state is being run into the ground, they have a huge approval rating. It's something like 2/3 of, I believe it's the Democrats at this point are kind of turning into the Socialist Party.
Oh, yeah.
Believe California is being run just fine, and it's something like 1/3 and less of the other party believe that. And, a lot of these people are just moving out. For instance, if you're one of the 1/3 of Democrats that thinks California just took it too far, maybe you go to Nevada, where every time they want to spend more money, they legalize something new. Or, you go to Washington or Oregon that takes a more balanced approach to spending versus taxation. Let them leave. Let them go off to Nevada if they want those kind of laws, or they go to Oregon or Washington if they want those kind of laws. And everyone who wants to sit in the unmitigated disaster, which we now call the Soviet Republic of California, can stay there and see what it is they want and what the outcome is.
Yeah, it's going to be horrific.
It's the train wreck in slow motion is what it is.
It is, and there'll be millions of people that'll starve to death here in California because of the communist government, and because these people are brainwashed, spoon-fed to, suggestive programming to be socialist, to be
Well,
socially
not to
minded.
mention the state education system over there. I mean, it's
Oh
a
God, yeah, I know. I'm
and
going back to school here.
yeah, and I have family out there. My dad's side of the family is out there, and some of them really like California and think that it's the best thing ever. It's the best thing since pizza and beer. And I got a few of my dad's relatives that literally can't wait to get out, but they're trapped for a variety of different reasons. Some of which I mentioned earlier. Sometimes it's they can't sell their home, or
Right.
they're literally 5 years from retirement, and
Hmm.
then they'll get out. Something like that. So I, you
Yeah.
know, I personally, and I've joked a lot in this podcast, and I probably shouldn't have, about basically turning California into a communist wildlife refuge, or actually, turning it into a tourist attraction, to go vacation in a communist place for a little while just to see what it's like. But the fact of the matter is, everyone in this podcast was technically accurate
Right.
on their view. And the interesting part is, it really doesn't matter. And I'm saying this very gently. It really doesn't matter when the illegals can vote. When that has happened, it's over. It's
Right.
done. It would be time to get out. Because it's failing. It's going to continue to fail, because why wouldn't these guys actually vote themselves in more free stuff? Why
Right.
Well,
wouldn't they?
that's the thing. It's Milton Friedman's "let the people vote with their feet."
Yeah.
If people come here, come to California, they don't want to pay taxes and they want to cash in on all the free stuff, let them. Because then when the tax base is finally gone, all the free stuff has to go too. And they can try running that debt financed, but eventually the deficit will be so large and the revenue will be so little, no one will actually go there
Yeah.
or, want to be a taxpayer there.
Sure. It's just like what's happening in Illinois right now, by the way. Same
And New
cause
York.
and reason. Go ahead, Craig.
And New York.
And New York
So,
as well.
so it's like a snowball rolling down a mountain, right? So maybe something could have been done to stop it, when it was small. But now that it's so large and has so much momentum behind it, you best just get out of its way and let it careen into the village below. There's really nothing you can do at this point.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Hey,
you just got to end the suffering. You can't prolong it,
well, I
by
agree with Craig, because I mean, I would rather be smacked by a giant snow boulder than die of starvation any day of the week.
Yeah.
So,
Me too.
so, but we joke a little bit about this, but this is a very serious concept. But I would like to echo what American Man said. If you are prone to actually do something, at least do a little bit. There is a recall. I am circling it right now on my screen. I will have the link down below in the description section of this video. For those of you who would like to at least attempt to do something, you can probably, if you can actually get this this recall done, you can slow down the commification of California. That's about all you can do, but you can slow it down, and maybe if more people give them more time to get out of the state before things start getting bad.
Mm-hmm.
Just ask the people of Illinois. Trust me, I know people in Illinois that wish they had gotten out 5 years ago, but they didn't think it was going to get this bad. They really didn't.
Yeah.
And I know good folks in Illinois, real good folks. I mean, fine people, but they really thought that it would all end with the doubling of their property taxes overnight in 2013. They thought that was the worst of it. It's over. We survived it. It's okay. Now we're going to heal. And then things just continued to get worse. They kept raising taxes on everything else on top of that.
Wow.
Just never enough for them.
Correct.
They just
Well,
kinda-
eventually they're going to hit. Eventually they're going to hit the peak of the Laffer curve.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to hit peak taxation for any given tax, and they're going to go beyond it, and revenue will go down, either because people avoid paying the tax altogether, or they don't consume whatever it is or do whatever it is that's causing them to pay all that money.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so the real trick is to not own property in these states.
Correct.
Because you don't actually own it; they own
That's
it, and you have them
yep.
to live in it.
And then also too, as I mentioned before earlier, that becomes a boat anchor that's attached to your leg. I
So
mean,
you don't
that's a
want to live.
huge
You don't want to
investment.
invest in these
Go ahead.
places. You don't want to invest in these places. That's for sure.
Hmm. Well, as I know a guy personally that owns a telescope, outfit. He manufactures telescopes. He moved Explore Scientific from California to Arkansas because of the taxes. He
And so he
couldn't
had to make a
survive
move. He had
anymore.
to uproot his whole business and all of his employees' lives,
Yep.
right? And it was very inconvenient and very disruptive for his
Hmm.
business.
It
And
was.
there was almost and the taxes were so burdensome that he had to do it because otherwise his business wouldn't have been viable.
That's correct. He actually felt that he had about 4 months left before he would have been bankrupt when he moved to Arkansas by staying in California. The taxation was just too heavy out there. And this guy is a guy who, probably associates, his thinking more on the left than on the right. But business is business. His business was failing under the policies of the state of California.
Well, that's just the interesting bit, Timmy. It's you vote with your feet, and
You do.
maybe some of these left-leaning guys, maybe they want the free stuff and they don't want to pay lots of taxes for it. Well, I mean, they do have options. They can go to Nevada, the state that specializes in financing things through creative means,
Hmm.
legalizing new things and taxing it.
Yep.
And then they can spend anytime they want to spend more, and they always do. They just legalize something new and tax that. So they just bring bits from the black market into the white market,
Hmm.
and they tax it.
Yep.
A very immodest amount. Well, maybe not too terribly modest, but fairly modest. And that's how it finances itself.
Hmm.
And if they, think that's the way to do things, maybe they should move there.
Yep.
They don't even have a business tax there. They don't have income tax in Nevada. The only income tax they do have is on like gambling and so forth.
And that's a point well taken as well. I would like to bring it around to something American Man said earlier. And people who are leaving California that really don't like the monster they've created will create these monsters again in other states if they're given a chance. So if you see the beginnings of a monster like this, shut it down. Do something. Don't let
Get it while it's early.
That's correct. Get the monster while it's early. And we do refer to government as a monster. And the reason being is because the bigger it grows, the more it must feed.
That's right.
So I'm actually just selling a product on eBay right now, and I'm noticing that we're charging a 7% tax for South Carolina.
Wow.
So now we have to figure out each state's tax laws and then collect those taxes for that state because their tax slaves happen to live in that state.
Hmm.
So the federal government and the state governments, they're fighting with each other for ownership of your labor.
Yep. That's an excellent way of putting it, Craig, by the way. They do own your labor, but they're trying to basically slice up the pie even thinner. That is your labor between federal and state and city and county and local. All
Yep.
the taxing authorities out there are wanting a bigger slice of your time, your life that you're actually living literally to feed the monster, to pay taxes to the taxman. And it doesn't matter what country you're in. Everyone has a varying degree of severity with taxation. But
we do have a planned podcast sometime in the eventual future about the ways in which.
I'm sorry, Conjecture, you completely broke up. Are you there? Okay, basically I could tell you what Conjecture was saying.
See and ones you don't see.
Okay, Conjecture?
Yeah.
We lost you right after you said we have a podcast planned.
Well, we have a podcast planned on the effects of taxation, the hidden taxes, along with
Well, basically, how taxation on that level affects the family, how the family structure and the culture has been altered through taxation. And it's a very interesting podcast. By the way, we have several podcasts being planned right now. This is something I alluded to in our last podcast, plus a few other added bonuses and surprises coming up. Okay, well, I'll tell you what, if it's all right with you guys, I'm going to go ahead and round this one out. And first of all, I'd like to say thank you very much to American Man 1967 for living in California and taking a hit for the team and reporting directly from Ground Zero for us.
Yeah, you're welcome.
ChaosCraig, who is in New York, whose state is somewhat similar to California's, and a Conjecture, who is actually in the state of Missouri at this time. And we appreciate all three of you for participating in the podcast this evening. And for those of you who are just listening in to the podcast, you may have missed tonight's podcast, but you haven't missed out on the conversation. We're on Discord. You guys can find us in the link below. It's free, and you could come and talk to us personally. Most of us get on quite a bit, at least once a day, and chat. So you guys are welcome to do so. And it's a voice chat. So it's a text chat and a voice chat. It's pretty neat. Okay, that's it for tonight, gang. Thank you all for participating. Remember, links down below for every page that we showed in this. Please sign the petition if you're in the state of California. And thank you all for spending about, it looks like it might have been an hour with us. God bless each and every one of you. Take care.